Hello, and thank you for joining the Hemp special session as part of the 2021 Virtual Southeast Regional Fruit and Vegetable Conference. I am Jean Williams-Woodard, and I'm an Associate Professor and Extension Plant Pathologist with the University of Georgia, and I will be the moderator for this presentation. Pesticide CEU and CCA credits are available for most presentations offered during the live Southeast Regional Conference. Check the Pesticide CEU guide for a list of approved presentations and participating states. The Pesticide CEU guide is located in the Event Resources tab under the Media Player. The guide is also available at the Resources Center located on the main menu of the conference platform. Please note, pesticide credits will only be available for registered attendees and only during the live conference. Credits will not be available for on-demand viewing. There is a simple three-step process to receive pesticide CEU and CCA credits. First, go to the audience chat box located on the left side of your screen and type your first name, last name, and the states for which you are requesting credits. Again, go to the audience chat box located on the left side of your screen and type your first name, last name, and the states for which you are requesting credits. You will need to do this for every presentation to request CEU credits. The second step is to sign out at the end of every presentation. To sign out, go to the audience chat box and type your first name, last name, and the states for which you are requesting credits. You will be reminded to sign out at the end of the presentation. The third step is to complete the pesticide CEU registration. You only have to complete the registration one time during the conference. This is not required with every presentation. To access the pesticide CEU registration web link, open the Pesticide CEU Guide on the Event Resources tab located under the Media Player. The Pesticide CEU registration web link is located on the front cover of the guide. This presentation is pre-recorded to reduce technical difficulties. We will be answering your questions live at the end of the presentation. You can submit a question at any point during this presentation by typing your question in the questions box and pressing send. Don't forget to thank our 2021 conference sponsors and exhibitors by visiting the virtual trade show and featured products pavilion. Lastly, don't forget to join us each morning for coffee chats and each evening for networking. Check the conference agenda for details. And now I'd like to reintroduce myself. My name is Jean Williams-Woodard, and I'm an extension plant pathologist with the University of Georgia. I've actually been with the University of Georgia for 25 years, and I have statewide extension responsibilities for commercial, ornamental, and tree production in greenhouses and nurseries, for forestry, urban forestry, Christmas trees, alfalfa and other legume forages, as well as industrial hemp. I've been with the university for 25 years and have extensive experience in plant disease diagnostics and disease management. And I teach 3 courses, including Diagnosis and Management of Plant Diseases, Ornamental Pest Management, and Clinical Plant Pathology. I'm also the coordinator for the Interdisciplinary Master of Plant Protection and Pest Management graduate degree program. And today I'm going to be talking to you about diseases of hemp in Georgia. This is actually, in my opinion, a very important topic to be discussing because hemp production is may be limited in some areas. And the reason it's going to be limited is because of some of the disease pressure that we have. So I'm going to be going over some of the more common diseases of some of the field-grown hemp of what we saw this past year. Some of the common things that we did see were fungal leaf spots. We also had issues with southern blight, charcoal rot, some fusarium stem rots, as well as also some root rots caused by the pathogens Rhizoctonia and Pythium. I'm going to focus, though, on some of the fungal leaf spots, the southern blight, and then even some of the charcoal rot. When we start talking about the hemp leaf spots, these are fungal leaf spots, and the predominant species of fungi that we find in Georgia causing those leaf spots are fungi like Bipolaris, Cercospora, and Coronespora. There are other fungi that have been found in surrounding states, including Septoria as well as Exerohilum. There's also been a bacterial leaf spot that's been reported in both Kansas as well as also in Florida, but we have not seen that bacterial leaf spot here in Georgia. One of the things about the leaf spots is that, and I'm going to show you a picture of some of the symptoms, is that these leaf spots can severely damage the plants, cause a lot of leaf drop, which is basically going to affect also crop yield. There are some differences in cultivar susceptibility to the various leaf spots. This needs to be further evaluated, and more research needs to be done on this. The University of Tennessee has actually put out an extension publication that is called Hemp Disease and Pest Management. In that publication, they do also have a listing of some of the hemp cultivars and their susceptibility rankings, and over at 3 different locations. One of the problems with reviewing that publication is that the same cultivar or the same cultivar name may have different responses depending upon the plant source, as well as also the location and where that plant was grown. So this is something that does need to be further evaluated. These hemp leaf spots, they are fungal leaf spots. It's been like a variety of different fungi that are causing them. Mostly the leaf spots tend to start out as yellowish spots, like in the picture in the center of this slide. They eventually will turn tan with a darker border around the outside. Almost all of the different fungal leaf spots look about the same. And so without a microscope, it's very difficult to actually determine which species of fungus is actually causing these spots. The spots also, the symptoms vary depending upon cultivar. These are 2 different cultivars here in the pictures on the far left, as well as in the center and on the right. There are 3 different cultivars. Each one of them is showing symptoms at a different level and different severity. Eventually, those leaves, they will turn brown. They often drop from the plant. And then the pathogen is going to survive on that fallen leaf litter. Another disease that we have a problem with is southern blight, or it's also called southern stem rot. This is probably one of the most damaging root and stem diseases of hemp in Georgia. It's caused by the fungus Althelia ralphsii, which even I have trouble saying that. It's formerly known as Sclerotium ralphsii. The fungus infects most of our row crops in Georgia, a lot of our cotton, our peanuts. It's also a pathogen of vegetable crops, and so it's present in our soils throughout the state. The pathogen is not host specific. It actually has an incredibly wide host range. It survives in the soil as sclerotia. These are the hard, round structures that are produced at the base, right at the soil line on the base of infected stems. And it can survive as sclerotia in the soil for years. And it's one of the reasons why it is such a damaging disease on many of our different crops. It will kill infected plants, and it can move down rows either through tillage or any kind of movement of soil. So even workers who are going through and weeding, hand weeding, or doing any kind of work within the field, they could be actually moving some of the Sclerotium ralphsii or this Althea ralphsii sclerotia or hyphae in any of the soil that might be clinging to their clothing or to their shoes or any of their tools. And currently, chemical control is really limited for hemp production, and we're limited to biologicals and plant extracts. And that's the same thing. I want to come back to this again when we talk about management of these diseases. But many of these products are not very effective on southern blight in particular. And so it's something that they may be on the label for it, but they're not very effective on it. So these are just the symptoms that we see with southern blight. The picture on the left-hand side is a plant that's turning yellow, it's wilting, it's obviously dying. Those type of symptoms just tell you that there's something wrong with the lower stem and probably roots of that plant. They're not specific on their own if you're looking far away or just kind of looking at the entire field. What I look for then is to try to determine if we have southern blight is to look at the lower stem right at the soil line, and the pictures on the right mid center and on the right hand side of the slide show you both the dieback or the discoloration that's on the lower stem, as well as also the white hyphae, that's that fungal thread-like material that's going to be coming from the soil, moving up the stem or infecting any of the other foliage that might be there or some of the plant tissues. So it could be some of the fallen leaf litter. You get the hyphae that's there, and then also you will see the light tan round structures that are produced along with that hyphae. The light tan structures, they are the sclerotia, and they will become very hard. They'll be darkened with age, and it's once they are dislodged and they can be knocked off the plant tissue or the infected stems, they will end up sitting and surviving inside that soil. So if you were to replant in that same area, the chance of you developing southern blight on your next crop is actually very high. If you also look at that picture in the center, you see there's a nut sedge and weeds that are right around that infected plant. And the nut sedge itself is also infected with the southern blight and is killed by the southern blight. There are other root diseases, and we've found things from fusarium causing a stem rot and also a wilt, both also a pythium root rot and a rhizoctonia stem rot. Pythium and rhizoctonia also cause damping off and dieback of seedlings in greenhouses. The picture on the right-hand side of the slide is actually an infected plant. The plant is dead. The only green that's in that slide is actually a weed. But at the lower stem, right adjacent to the soil line, the stem is discolored. The root system has become soft and discolored. The plant initially started yellowing, and then eventually it died. This particular plant died of actually pythium root rot, and it was pythium that was infecting and causing that discoloration of the lower stem. The disease is most common in wet soils and as well as on weakened plants. So we really can't identify which pathogen is causing that dieback in the field without actually taking it back into like our plant disease clinic and trying to identify what the cause is. But all of them, both fusarium, pythium, and rhizoctonia, will cause the same type of symptoms of discoloration at the lower stem, rotting of some of the roots, and then eventually plant death. Another disease that was of interest this past year was charcoal rot, and it was seen sporadically in some fields. And most of the fields we saw it in were in southern Georgia. It is a sporadic in occurrence, and it's also sporadic in its spread throughout that field. Initially, what you'd see is actually like the picture on the left-hand side is yellowing plants. The plants start yellowing. Most of it is on the interior foliage, and then eventually you may see some branch death and maybe the entire plant actually dying. The center picture is showing one of the stems, the branches that's adjacent to the stem, and there's like a tan canker or a dead portion of that branch. Within that cankered area, there's actually like little black, almost pimple-like little structures, and that's what you can see on the on the right-hand side of the slide. Those black structures are the fruiting bodies of the pathogen. The pathogen also then produces what they call microsclerotia. So they're very, very small structures, almost darkened hyphal pieces that are developed within the tissue, and it can be in the infected stem tissue. It can also be in the root system of the plant. And That's how this pathogen will survive from year to year. And it can survive as microsclerotia for years inside that field soil. So where areas that have had this charcoal rot in the past, they're likely to have charcoal rot in subsequent crops. There are other diseases that do affect hemp, and if you do any kind of searching on the internet, you're going to find some of the diseases mentioned. Botrytis and Fusarium species infecting the flowers and the buds, both either pre or post-harvest for hemp, is a major issue. Powdery mildew is also a problem that has been reported, and it's one of the things that we see mostly in greenhouse production. I have not really seen powdery mildew in the field. It doesn't mean it doesn't occur. It's just one I have not really seen. The other thing that several new diseases have been identified within on hemp in other states. One has been hemp rust. That is the picture that's on the right-hand side. It's a typical rust disease where you're seeing these rust-colored spores developing on the backside of the leaves. We have not seen this disease here in Georgia. If you've seen it, I'd like to know about it. And also, root knot nematode is a problem on hemp as well. I don't know the extent of how much of it, how damaging it's really going to be on the hemp, but we have root knot nematode naturally occurring within our soils, and so it's a great potential for us to have the problem. I forgot to mention the picture on the right-hand or the left-hand side is botrytis that is infecting the fungus botrytis that's infecting the flower bud, and it destroys the buds. Just lastly, want to talk about disease management. This is an area where a lot of research is really needed. We are really limited on what we can do for disease management on hemp. And that's why diseases, I think, are just such a major problem that we're going to have within hemp. The best way to try to deal with diseases is really to plant disease-resistant cultivars. We need to have research done as well as breeding done to try to develop some of these cultivars. We need to evaluate some of the different cultivars and from different plant sources, so that we can identify them from which cultivars are going to have the least amount of disease problems. Primarily, most of the resistance is really with the leaf spots. The other thing we need to do is really determine our pathogen life cycles as well as our best management practices. We don't know. Some of these diseases and pathogens are actually new, some of them to the country, some of them to the state. So we need to actually figure out where the pathogens are surviving, how they're spreading, what other hosts they may actually infect. And those things still need to be done. And we need to do most of this life cycle and as well as breeding for disease resistance, because our chemical control options are currently very few. Most of the products we have available they're, like I mentioned, botanical oils or either plant extracts, or some of them are like the potassium silicate or the potassium bicarbonate. We need to evaluate some of these products, especially in our soils and in our climate. Most of the efficacy of these products in other trials in other states has been very poor to fair. And so until we have more chemical options, we can't rely on them for managing diseases within our hemp production. So if we don't have the chemicals, we have to start looking at just the cultural disease management. And this is going to start from disease-free transplants as well and seed from trusted sources. Often many of these pathogens, they could be surviving on some of the seed. They could be actually introduced in the greenhouse, in the transplant production, and then carried to the field as well. So starting disease-free is essential in trying to manage these diseases. The other thing then is following good sanitation practices within the transplant houses, so we're not keeping the diseases around and not spreading them out into the field. Crop rotation also may help reduce our disease pressure. Weed management will also help to reduce our disease pressure, as well as also reduce the disease reservoirs for those pathogens. Removing infected plants and reducing the overwinter of the inoculum is very important, especially for things like the southern blight. If we can remove them and get rid of some of the sclerotia that are there, we're helping to reduce the amount of disease that's carrying over into the next year. We also want to avoid moving soils between fields. So that's on tractor tires and tines, even on boots or on tools. So trying to keep things as clean as possible. Using drip irrigation will help to keep the foliage dry. And for our major problem, like those leaf spot diseases, is the amount of leaf spot disease development is related to how long those leaves stay wet. So the wetter the leaves and the longer those leaves stay wet, the more disease pressure you have. So if you can use drip irrigation to try to reduce the amount of moisture that's getting onto the plant, that's going to help to keep the plants dry. The other thing is spacing plants adequately enough, as well as orienting some of the rows to maximize airflow and to aid in plant drying. So the faster the plants dry, the better off they are, the less disease pressure they're going to have. So that's what I need you to understand and actually discuss, and hopefully we can discuss that within some of the questions and during the live part of this presentation, or the live question and answers. So we will go into the live parts of the presentation. Again, you are reminded to again, to type your questions into the question box and press send. Also, as a reminder, if you're requesting pesticide credits for this presentation, don't forget to sign out of this presentation and go to the audience chat box and type your first name, last name, and the states for which you are requesting credits. So let's take the first question.